Hi, this is Miles Jaffe recording the final presentation for the CSE 262 final spring 26. Um, Sorry if my voice is a little froggy or quiet today. I've had a sore throat, so bear with me. So let's start with quickly explaining the main features and going through the documentation of Clojure. This is my first language out of the three. The three I chose were Clojure, which is a Lisp-based language that works on the JVM created by Rich Hickey. Strudel, which is a browser-based live music coding platform, which is used to create music in real-life environments. Very interesting ways, as we'll get to. And Uiwa, or Wiwa, which is a APL-based array language that is focused on getting things done in the minimum number of characters. So let's start with Clojure. The documentation that I referred to here was this great reference tab of their website, which, as you can see here, has a wide variety of options for things you can do with the language. This is a pretty complete documentation for the language. So the main purpose of Clojure, similar to Lisp in general, is just similar to other functional programming languages, to enable programming that is faster and a lot more concise due to some of the functional programming ideas that are implemented, like macros, first class and higher order functions, and immutability. It's also designed for concurrency. I found a lot of my details on the space placement in this great documentation, as well as elsewhere on their website. They have a pretty good history presentation, including this great video presented by Rich Hickey at a conference in 2021. But most of this comes straight out of the reference. So for instance, with macros, the programmatic macro system I talked about a lot in terms of conceptual structure. I kept my scope to just the REPL of Clojure. Rather than more organized, larger scale projects, because I was very interested in this pretty unique form of development via REPL, where pretty much everything can be iterated upon in this incredibly interactive way. That was definitely something that interested me, and they talk a lot about it in this part of the documentation, with all these interactive use, and error printing, which I talk about more in the errors section. Clojure is very customizable. That's one of the main ideas, is it's The conceptual structure is also high integrity, very composable. It's built around S expressions like any other Lisp, and you can redefine anything as anything else if you're careful enough about it. The notation is primarily in the form of S expressions, but as you saw here, there can also be auxiliary settings and things and dependency files that you can have. And here's a code sample that I will not be running right now, which uses some interesting features of Clojure. As you can see here, it prints out this raw code. This is not strings. This is code. And it uses the syntax quoting operator to print the code straight out. It also uses unquote splicing and the map function to programmatically apply string concatenation to this series of two arguments that are defined in the macro. So definitely this is a good choice for experienced expert programmers, maybe people who have worked with other Lisps, but maybe not, because I found this Brazilian bank, which is actually now one of the primary corporate sponsors of Clojure, Nubank, that owns the consultancy service that Rich Hickey founded now. Nubank has 800 developers, which I learned on their website, and almost none of them have used Clojure before. So it enables very fast development because code is very concise. This would take longer in a purely imperative language. Anything else I've got to do? Yeah, so technical dimension placing primarily was based on the documentation, such as data structures, data types. That went straight into the conceptual structure part. The sequence abstraction, I learned about that right here on this page. So let's go on to Strudel. Strudel is my choice of the programming system that is more about code as art than more functional or business-oriented types of coding. It also has pretty good documentation. Something very interesting about Clojure is that there is a real-world scene of people who make music using it. So the idea of Strudel is that it is based on live coding music, which means that you have patterns, musical patterns, as you can see in this example. And as you'll see when I play this example in a minute, I will live update with this button, live update the code to make it sound different, update the music without relaunching. This enables iterative editing of programs during live performances, which is a very unique interaction loop. The evaluation gulf is uniquely among programming languages, I would say. nor programming systems. The evaluation gulf is evaluated audially. You can hear if you like your output. There are two different types of notation. This pattern sequencing, which is the core patterns. These different types of brackets in the strings signify different rhythmic patterns and different ways of repeating them. If I remember correctly, the square brackets mean that they all alternate every loop. So this pair of square brackets means that when you're going through this loop, it does nothing for 3 loops, and then on the 4th loop it plays X, which I believe is some kind of drumhead hit. So obviously this leads to a pretty coherent conceptual structure because the developer, this guy named Alex McLean, knew exactly what they wanted when developing the language. And it was also based off a previous language he had also made, Tidal Cycles, which is written in Haskell, and Strudel is a JavaScript port of that. So again, most of this comes from their documentation. The pattern effects, such as reverse, juxtapose, pan, there are so many ways to do the same thing. So the integrity is not particularly high, kind of like Perl in that regard, where I believe this was on the technical dimensions of programming systems, like table on their website, where they had Perl as something that was noted as being like anything goes. There should be multiple ways to do the same thing. Strudel is a lot like that, but only with this secondary notation of the composition operators. It's very customizable. As you'll see in a minute, you can share a pattern and share it with other people. Errors. I'll show you an error in a minute when I'm doing the live coding, but errors show up at the bottom of the screen in the composition notation, and errors in the pattern notation just are usually silent. So let's do the code sample. Okay, I hope you can hear this because it's coming out of my laptop speakers. Now I will demonstrate the live coding by changing one of these chords to something that sounds weird. As you can hear, that's pretty different. Now I'll change it to something even more different. Hear how different that is? Now I'll change the drum pattern to doesn't show up. Clearly shows us there's an issue at line 30. Or I guess that shows up because it's looking all down here. But the errors are on this line, so it's not a very descriptive error. So now, so Strudel is a lot more recent than Clojure. Clojure is the oldest one of the three. Strudel was started on 2022, although Tidal Cycles dates back to 2006, so it's really kind of from the same time period as Clojure, and the last one here is now the weird one. So Uiwa, also pronounced Wiwa, is an array programming language similar to APL. Primarily focuses on tacit programming, which is coding without explicitly naming variables. Now, you may be asking, what is array programming? How do you program without using variables? Uiwa uses a stack in programs such as these, which can be found in the demo on the front page at uiwa.org. So the stack is evaluated right to left on a line and top to bottom. So I could rewrite this as I'm about to do as a one-line program. This creates a matrix that is an X that takes the identity matrix, or the array of arrays, where 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, etc. are ones, and also transposes it. So the range up to 5, these stack operators evaluate whatever's in front of them on the stack. So this outputs this array, this line takes this array and outputs the identity matrix, as you can handily see in this very short evaluation loop. This line reverses it. This by is a function to modify the stack. And then we get the maximum of those two, of this, the reversed one, and this, the non-reversed one. So obviously a very odd language, and you can use it to do much more strange things. There's image generation, even audio. So you could theoretically, if you really wanted to, use this as a new strudel, although it'll be a bit more difficult to set things up. Again, with strudel being declarative and Uiwa being this very odd paradigm of array programming languages. Everything is based around these glyphs, so there's very high conceptual integrity, but also a low level of customizability because there's no way to change the glyphs or really add new glyphs, only add new functions. There's one good one up here that has uses functions. This simulation of the game of life. This very complicated function performs one round of the game of life, and this creates a matrix, as you can see in the reminder text, a 30 by 30 matrix of integers. And it performs the life iteration function on it 100 times, as you can see from this repeat glyph. And it has great documentation. I selected all three of these languages based on the quality of their documentation. That's where I got most of this space placement from. This page, Thinking with Arrays, detailing using arrays to solve problems, I would say is one of the primary sources that I use to how to think about the language, as well as the excellent language tour, which helped me develop a good fundamental understanding of what's doing what. So I'm focusing on just the online pad of Uiwa right now. It very similar to strudel. Um, you can share. You can write something in the pad and share it. You can copy a link to some code and paste in the pad. These pad links are programmatic on the WeWa website. Very similar to strudel. You can do the same thing on the main. Let me show you the actual strudel REPL. So you can share. And those are just very similar ways of doing things that suggest a similar lineage. The information is even stored in the URL for both. So the array programming language, is a paradigm that was started by APL, antiquated but very interesting math-focused language from the 70s. So the only data type is arrays. Although there are also strings, but there are arrays of numbers. There are individual numbers, but they're the exception. Even maps are just map arrays. All functions are stack-based, meaning that they take something from the stack and output something else. Like the on function calls the function in front of it and puts the argument to that function back on the stack. So if we took this on away, this line would just output 16, but we put the on back because it's reducing over the array using add, which is another interesting array-based feature that was in APL. And it'll put both there. You could also use by, which is the opposite. It'll put the original argument last instead of first. This is very high integrity because everything is a glyph, but it's also hard to define new glyphs. Customizability is relatively high in terms of picking up and customizing other people's code, although it may be difficult to read. Complexity reduction, not much to speak of. You are exposed to the full complexity of the stack and managing it with stuff like on and by. Obviously inherently difficult adaptability, but high sociability because it has a very active Discord server. All three of these languages are open source. Clojure has conferences happening in real life. Strudel has these this real life algo rave scene in London. But WeWa is the only one with a online first, online focused community that I'd definitely say would show a newer kind of generation of programming languages. And I would say that people working, just anecdotally from talking to people in the Discord, would skew towards younger, like Gen Z programmers. Anything else? Yeah, just confirming that this was the Clojure documentation I used to write the report. This is the Strudel. Oh, where'd it go? This is the Strudel documentation that I used, and this is the WeWa documentation. Thank you.